Hi, and welcome
I'm in
to another
silly mood right now.
Sarah, by the
Hi,
way, like Buddha.
and welcome to another episode of Creating Resilience. As you can hear a lot going on in the background. We're all excited because Sarah is back with us. Vanessa is in Indiana, and you might actually get to experience her in a U-Haul truck today.
That's Vanessa.
Paige is away this week, and we have a new host, the absolutely magnificent Lisa Chamberlin. So please join me in welcoming Vanessa to the gang, and we will all mute ourselves while Lisa is speaking, and then unmute ourselves when we speak. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be a part of this glorious group of inspired individuals, and thankful to Doreet for bringing me in to this experience. And I know Doreet wanted me to really talk about resilience, which is very important right now. I'm the queen of resilience, and of course the other end of resilience is the adversity, right? And the universe right now is going through some major changes, and there's COVID, there's job loss, there's families having to homeschool their kids, there's climate change. The world is going through a lot of shifting. And shifting, while it can be very difficult, offers us the opportunity to really go within and reflect and learn and adapt and grow. And so I am thankful for the opportunities I've had in my life to really go through these experiences, because on so many levels, it gives us new tools and a better life at the other end of it, a place coming from a very inspired vision. But of course, going through adversity can be challenging. And so the gift of that is new tools. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And speaking of going through some challenging times, Sarah, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you with us again. How are you? And please unmute yourself and join right in.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you for having me on, and Vanessa, Doreet, Lisa, everybody that's a part of this. I haven't really been able to join recently because, as you know, it's been very busy. As Lisa just mentioned, our lives have really changed, and it actually has affected also my job at work. I'm a social worker, so we're having a lot of people with naturally and inevitably with a lot of anxiety disorder. So this is a lunchtime for me. Anyway, here I am, and I'm really glad to be here. And I think we have a really good topic today to talk about. I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. I'm so happy to have you back. And here comes Vanessa.
I am coming to you from Indianapolis, and it takes a lot of resilience just for me to be in this state. Oh my goodness, is it different from LA? Everything is so different here and so much slower. And I'm really using some tools, because anytime you ask anyone a question, we're fixing up my partner George's house for sale, and anytime you ask somebody a question, you kind of have to hear their whole life story. And here's my LA self like, would you just hurry up and get to the point, just answer my question. So I'm finding myself having to really breathe and calm down and relax, and just not worry so much about time. And we got to get this done. We're on a time limit, and I need to leave, to go back to LA soon. And just really thinking of resilience in the context of being able to be present and not having everything as orderly and calm in the way I'd like it to go, and just pulling on my stores of being fluid and going with things. And that's been very, very challenging for me. It's also not a very vegan friendly place. And so, but we did find one vegan mecca, which was amazing. to visit, but it's really such a different culture. I almost feel like if I were in the middle of Bhutan, which I'm planning on visiting, it would feel less foreign to me than Indiana does, way of life and culture. But it really kind of makes you confront a lot of your issues, or at least for me, makes me confront a lot of my issues here in terms of how I think things ought to be, and not being in the kind of space that I would want to be in. So I'm grateful for the learning opportunity, and so grateful to have this, my sacred Mecca, this time period every week, just is so grounding and stabilizing.
Well, Vanessa, we love that you are actually learning that rushing and hurrying and making quick decisions is not the only way to be in life.
Yes. Oh, yes. And listening to people's stories and not telling them to hurry up, get to the point, is definitely instructive for me.
And listening to people's stories is exactly what I believe we need to do right now. And this is the lesson we're all being taught. Slow down, get off your treadmill, and listen to each other. How do you feel about that, Sarah, being that you are a social worker and this is all you do all day long? How do you feel having to do that in your downtime as well?
Yeah, I really enjoy talking to people. And when I first went and started my master's degree in social work, we had a funny professor. He said, anybody who's here to make a lot of money, you might as well get up and walk away. This is not going to be a field where you make money. So some people actually got up and walked away. And then the people that stayed, really, we had this whole big conversation about our ability, our desire to want to be there for each other. So for me, actually, it's just a bonus that when I connect with my friends, when I connect with the community, I volunteer for the houseless, I tutor homeless kids as well. And so, there's all kinds of opportunities to listen to people and connect with them outside of my job. And I find that just as satisfactory, and it's such a learning opportunity for me, actually. And I think the most important part of listening to somebody is, not just hearing, but listening, is really putting away our own immediate thoughts and reactions that we want to say, and just putting that on hold and allowing that person to express themselves. And for me, it's just something that I do naturally at work and outside of work. And resilience, this is all a part of it. We talk about emotional resilience. There's so many different parts to it. There's so many ways we can practice every single day how to strengthen our own immune system emotionally, and how to be able to practice these concepts that we learn. I mean, the era of data collection is over. We've been collecting and listening and going to workshops and paying for seminars, going to therapy, whatever it takes to improve. But I think we are definitely getting to an area where we're really not, we're kind of forced to put into use everything that we've learned, whether it's about environment, veganism, politics, whatever it is. It's time to now dive in, put into use what we've learned all this time, all this information that we've collected. And it's such a great opportunity for us to build on that emotional strength by being able to practice what we've learned.
Exactly. Thank you for that. One of the things that I wanted to actually find out from Vanessa, being that she's been on the road traveling, has travel, I know you said something about that you're now being forced, of course, to slow down and listen to people, but you also were on a plane for the first time since the lockdown. And in the framework of creating resilience, what did you learn from that experience?
Oh boy. So I was pretty shocked. First flight, I saw that, of course, everyone has to wear a mask to board the plane, but there was no social distancing whatsoever. Either in LA boarding the plane, on our layover in Phoenix, or to Indiana, coming onto the plane, leaving. Everyone was just packed in next to each other. The seats, we were all just on top of each other like the usual flight. There were no gaps, no seats, no empty seats whatsoever, full flight. And I found that when I was exiting the plane or coming onto it, I really was just turning my head away because I wanted to make sure no particles, no anything could get on me, because I saw nobody was paying any attention whatsoever. And in Indianapolis, because we're here to renovate and we have a very limited time that we have to do it in, I'm seeing that they're very casual about COVID here. I've had so many workers come to give us estimates without any kind of covering, without, I keep stepping back to create more social distance because they're just not taking it seriously. I was just in Home Depot, as I like to call it, and I just saw that everyone is doing business as usual, as if there isn't this whole pandemic going on. And it's really, really quite surprising. And I just feel that while businesses say you're now required to wear these face shields, this is a recent thing. They haven't had it for a long time the way we do in LA. It just seems that people here really aren't taking it very seriously. And I know their numbers are really rapidly increasing. Every state is increasing. And now with the flu season, it's freezing here. And with the flu season coming, who knows what's going to happen? So I'm protecting myself by keeping that distance, kind of turning my head away, washing my hands constantly, of course, and just being mindful of taking care of myself in the circumstances. And I just wanted to say my point about listening to people. I'm happy to listen to people and I love talking to people. It's just, for me, what's been a challenge is that when I call somebody for an estimate and I get a 20-minute explanation of every appointment they have to go to, and I have to go here and there and there and there, that's the challenging thing for me, where it's like, can you just give me an answer? Will 5 o'clock on Wednesday work? I don't need a dissertation of your entire agenda. So that's been the challenge. It's not really about listening to people. I chit chat with people everywhere and I love doing that. It's just sometimes you just need an answer and not an extensive laundry list from people.
So Lisa, I see you nodding your head there. Why don't you unmute yourself and join right in?
I'm laughing because prior to this COVID, I had a job where I was constantly on a plane. If I wasn't going somewhere in the United States, I was traveling around the world, and my life has shifted. And I think the gift of this, like I talked about earlier, is slowing down. And I think so many people are starving to share and connect their stories. And when you are in LA, our tolerance, because there's so many people here, and that's the gift and the challenge. There's a lot of different personalities you're dealing with, so you kind of have to, you put a shield on and you kind of want to get to the point. It's not quite like the East Coast. They're a little more aggressive about it, but the West Coast, it's kind of an understood thing that you don't spend too much time chit-chatting. You get to the point. And I had to learn that when I moved from Seattle, because I was a chatty person. I moved slow on traffic, and I really had to learn new tools to navigate the city. But the gift that I've learned in this experience of COVID and this reassessment is I've really had to go within. I've been in my house pretty much for 7 months. I mean, I go out and I get groceries. But I haven't been really in a car for the most part. I have spent a lot of time in this environment, and I'm so grateful for this. It's been a big gift. So, but I understand, as you go through this process of reimagining your life in this pandemic and political environment, that, our patience is challenged, and a lot of us feel like we don't have the support that we're used to, even hugs. So, we're all going through and navigating this together. And I'm thankful that I have each of you to do that with.
So one of the things that I'd like you all to think about today is the possibilities of what can we ourselves do, being that we cannot control people's behaviors and people's actions? What can we ourselves do to create resilience for ourselves on a daily basis to make sure that our needs are taken care of? So let's go first with Sarah, because Sarah, as a social worker, there must be many times that you feel you have to put your needs last.
Yes, actually, that does happen. And for me, one of the things that I mentioned last time we spoke was about breathing. It's very important that we take the time to just pause when things are hectic, whether it's in our personal lives or our collective lives. And I think a lot of times we're just so used to being so fast. Like Lisa said, she had to learn a whole new way when she moved here. Like everything is hurry up, get to the point, sign this, do that, make that phone call, text them, and then you sleep, get up, do the whole thing over again. And although that can be exciting and it can have a lot of benefits to it, I think over time it really does run you down. So and it wears out your body and mind. So for me, it's really about staying in my power. And staying in my power is such an easy thing to say, and for me, such a difficult practice, because every moment of the day, I can choose to be a victim of my situation, or I can choose to be in charge of my situation. And that's when I pause and I breathe. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly something that is outside of my control right now, whatever it may be, whether it's personal or whatever. Going into acceptance, taking a little moment to deep breathe, ask the universe, why is this in my movie? Why is this happening in my journey? Figuring out the reason for it, and then acting from that place of power and curiosity versus doing everything fast, 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 coming from a anxious, worried, unsure, uncertain, these feelings that we get into because it's just so natural to get it. Like when we talk to people, like Vanessa was stating, these people, as she's asking, she's busy, she has a lot of things to do, and they want to talk for 30 minutes. It's a really fine line. Like, how do you handle that? What do you do that's best for yourself and is kind and loving and spiritual to the other person? So all these things are things that happen every day in all of our lives. And I think if we just take a moment to pause and deep breathe and just recollect with ourselves, get into alignment with our higher power, whatever we believe that is. It could be your own higher consciousness. It could be a universal energy that's running our body and the universe, like whatever you believe is that power. I try to, for me, I connect with that power, and then I'm able to make better decisions from there because I feel more confident that I'm connected. When I'm disconnected from that universal energy is when I'm in panic because I don't know it. I don't think of God as a co-pilot. Like I'm managing everything, and when I need God, I'm like, oh, please. To me, God is the pilot, I'm the co-pilot. Like, you know what's best, whatever you call God, this energy knows best. And even collectively right now, the craziness that we're in, there is a general reason for it that our minds as human beings in this physical dimension cannot comprehend. We just need to go into acceptance that no matter how amazing and smart we are, we have not figured out the universe. So we just trust that if we get in alignment with it, which is love, kindness, forgiveness, patience, slowing down, deep breathing, yoga, all these things, we can hopefully be putting ourselves in a position where we can make our decisions from a more peaceful, confident place that's in our power instead of from a frantic, victimized, I can't believe life sucks, this is all happening to me kind of way. And for me, that's how I deal with it because I have both of those moments. Yeah.
Well, that's because you're human.
Right.
And, and I think these challenges are there to bring some cohesiveness into our lives. All the things that we know work, to confront all the things we don't like, and how can we blend both together? So, Vanessa, I see you nodding. What is your recipe for that?
You know, it's something that you just said, Doreet, in terms of having to confront these things that we don't like, where we have to create a relationship and decide what our attitude is. That really resonated with me. And something that Sarah said about how do we respond in a way where we keep our own boundaries and take care of our own needs, and yet we're still kind and loving to the other person. That was, to me, a perfect way of putting it, because I think, so for me in this example here, if I, given that I have a lot to do and I have to be back in LA at a certain time, so we have great odds against us. So taking good care of myself means I have to go quickly. I have to put an entire house together that's a shambles. And so taking care of myself means I need to move quickly. And I want to be caring and loving to people. And I have a tendency, I'm also a psychotherapist, I have a tendency to let people just talk because they want to talk, but that's not good care, self-care for me. So finding that balance has been very interesting for me, that I am very time pressured. And I'm thinking that if I'm curt with people, that's not good for my self-esteem. And if I let them go on, as I said, that also doesn't work. So finding a way of saying, of letting them know a framework, my framework of time is really important, so that both our needs can be met in that way. And the other thing is, I've really been thinking so much about how I get worked up, and yet I always figure things out. And then why did I get so worked up? You know, of these things that are chaotic that I don't like, and I get stressed about that. But so, for example, we had a contractor come in, give us an estimate. Basically, he said we could not get it done in the time period we're talking about, and that it was going to cost $50,000, which is way over budget and would be impossible for us to do and to make any profit off this. So I got very discouraged and I felt defeated. I felt stressed. I felt all this anxiety. But then I suddenly said to myself, wait a minute, I'm told all the time that I can't do things, that it's never going to work. It's going to be way more expensive and the time frame won't work. And yet I always figure it out. Every time I figure it out. I'm in a totally new setting. I don't know any workers. I don't know anyone. I don't know how it works here. And yet I know I'm resilient. I know I figure things out. I made more calls. I made more contacts, whatever. And now we have this team, and practically the interior is painted. We have to do the cabinets and the floor. Like, we're going to get it done way under that time period, the contractor said, and way under his budget. And I don't know why I forget to have faith in myself. And then when I start to see that it is working and that we are getting there, why did I get so worked up? Why did I have to put myself through all that stress and chaos? Is there some way that I can have more confidence in my past successes? Given that I'm a narrative therapist, that's exactly what I do with clients. It's like, let's build on those successes we've had in the past. So when you're in a completely new, stressful, chaotic situation, you know that you've done it then, despite all the negative, conversations out there saying, no, it's impossible. Remembering your strengths and your successes and your resilience can really help you going forward, in terms of knowing you'll figure it out, even if you don't know how, and knowing that you can be tranquil through the process, that it's going to happen. And I think that's been very apparent for me, to just have more confidence in myself that I can, face these huge struggles that I'm having right now and be able to get through them, because I have in the past. So I will continue to do so in the future. And having that sense of knowingness of oneself and one's own strengths and abilities is independent of those external circumstances. And that's been really, really important, and a whole COVID lesson for sure, because we're all having to deal with various situations that are completely new and unknown and different from anything we've had to. So having that internal strength, to me, reminding ourselves of our strengths and having that gratitude, taking those moments to breathe, those are all so essential to get through these extraordinarily challenging times that I know in my lifetime I've never seen the world like this before. So that's been so informative. So thank you, Indiana, for helping me really sink in some of those lessons to have greater calm amidst a stormy environment.
So, Vanessa, what if this sense of self you keep talking about doesn't exist? What if you're just that rolling ball of dust that I keep talking about? How would that change it for you? How would that change your experience of this?
I think it really just takes even more pressure. It's just kind of naming what that rolling ball of dust is in a moment, knowing it's just a snapshot, and also taking the pressure off outcomes, that it really, ultimately, this is all a game. We're just here temporarily just playing this game. And, you know, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, when I die, none of this really matters. And just really realizing that just being in that moment and just enjoying the moment, it's sort of like I wrote my essay for college on Candyland. I was working in the cancer ward with kids who were terminally ill at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and I would play Candyland with them. And I saw that they would just be playing and be in the moment of, I want to get all this candy. And sometimes I'm stuck in the molasses swamp. And then when I get out, I go and eat as much candy as I can. And I started thinking, gosh, I've been spending my whole high school career working so hard, so much pressure, because I got to get into this college, and then I got to get a good graduate school, and then good job, and move ahead and work. And I'm seeing that these kids are just so in the moment, and it's about that present, enjoying that moment, because nothing else really matters or exists other than that moment. And you know, these kids didn't have an awareness that they were going to die, but I just so appreciated that they were so in the moment. And so my actual college essay was about really learning this from them, and learning that it actually didn't matter if I was applying to Yale, and I wrote to them, it really doesn't matter if I get in, it's kind of irrelevant. That was my essay to get in. That I really learned, I don't always remember this, but that I really learned that only that moment matters, and having meaning in that moment, because nothing else really exists.
Exactly. And that is why you're there in Indiana.
I think you're right.
That's the gift, because nothing in the universe is ever given to us to punish us. It's all gifts, and it's always the perfect gift that we need at that place and time. Right, Sarah?
Right. It's one of the best tools that I've learned along the way is just taking that time to pause. I know it sounds so simple, but when I pause, a lot happens in that minute. I'm able to recollect and breathe, and like Vanessa said, really recognize my strength and have faith in it and have confidence in it. And when I say something right after that minute of gathering myself, it's always more loving. It's always more loving. It's better than what I would have said if I was coming from a reactionary place. It's all my emails and my texts are always better when I wait 10 minutes. It's just a fact for me, just time, just waiting, just pausing. And the crazier it gets outside of my personal life and my home, and collectively I see what we're going through, it makes me want to pause more, because I think that's a lot of where we got disconnected from ourselves, was getting involved so much into, I don't know what to call them, extracurricular things, like, for example, I don't know, sports, Kardashians, movies, reality shows, obsessed with all kinds of different things that are constantly giving us negative messages. That was my impression when I was plugged in. I probably could have told you the social security numbers of all the main actors in Hollywood. I knew so much about everything, and I realized one day that all of the stuff that I knew about them was really not going to help me in any way be a better person in this universe. So I unplugged. I haven't had a TV for 15 years. I don't have Netflix. I don't have Amazon. I don't have nothing. I do watch YouTube. I watch documentaries. I watch vegan things. I haven't watched a reality show in over 15 years. I watch Vanessa when she eats, and I'm just in awe because she eats so healthy and she's so mindful of what she eats. And I just love that. And I always tell her, I'm like, I want to do that with my mind, like I want to be careful about what goes in there. Like, I don't want to just turn on a show and watch it because it's funny and laugh because I want to laugh. My desire is not to laugh based on, on the account of somebody else's misfortune. If it's a racial joke or a joke about gender, women do this, men do that, blondes do this, ha ha, funny, yeah. But really what we're doing is we are stepping over our own morals and values. And by unplugging, for me, it said, listen, you can make funny things that make fun of, gays, women, African American, whatever it is that's out there, that's happening, that's great. People think it's funny. That's fine, but that makes me want to go push back even more. I'm going to become more aware. I'm going to become more conscious. The more collective effort I see to get us disconnected from ourselves is where I work harder to connect with myself.
Lisa, hi. How do you work to get connected with yourself, and what else would you like to add to this conversation?
Oh my goodness. I think I'm reveling in Candyland, thinking about my childhood obsession with that game. And I love how that Vanessa referred to, and also Sarah's discussion about unplugging. And technology is a gift and a challenge. When we're feeling things, we can start scrolling, which doesn't always bring us what we need. In fact, for the most part, it generally doesn't. So it's really being mindful of what we're exposing ourselves to right now. You could make a decision to be in fear, just turn on the news. And I'm not saying you hide from these things, but one thing I've been integrating into my practice is starting the day with joy. What inspires me? That's, and I'll read something that makes me, brings me some insight or levity. I love Florence Scovel Shinn, and kind of reflect on that. And at night, going back to joy, what have I experienced, gratitude that's helped or inspired me or shifted my perspective. So I think it's really just being self-aware, giving yourself permission to say no. Yesterday, I had a kind of a day where I was a little off balance, and it was probably the most off balance I've been since COVID started. And I just told myself, okay, even though there's a list of things that I need to do in my head, I'm just going to let go. I'm going to get my little furry blanket. I'm just going to relax. So, and it was such a gift.
There's that word, relax. That's a very important word right now. And if you know that you're just this ball rolling through the universe, all you want to do then is just relax and stop rolling so fast. At least that's how I feel anyway. And that's going to bring us to the topic that we all are going to be talking about very much in the next few weeks, and that is, how can we create resilience through mindful consumption? And is there even such a thing as mindful consumption? Does that exist? Can we put the word mindful and consumption together? So let's first define for each of us what mindfulness means, and then what consumption means. Who wishes to start? And before we start, Vanessa, is there anything from the audience yet?
No, I haven't seen any comments, and one of our favorite viewers, George, is is not able to watch because he's heading to Home Depot. So, and I'm afraid I haven't been sharing this out, which I'll do when I get to my laptop. But we invite everyone who's watching to join in. We love having viewer comments, even if it's after the fact. We make every attempt to respond to comments whenever,
Right.
whenever
So
we
would
see
you
them.
like to start off? What do you think is mindful consumption? And does it even exist?
Sure. Well, I think that consumerism it is contradictory to it is an oxymoron to say mindful consumerism, but I think consumption in the sense of what is enriching to me, taking it in a way that is adding to my quality of life and is not hurting anyone else, and uplifts me spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, in every way whatsoever, does exist. But it really requires planning and thinking deeply about whatever it is. So for example, Sarah's talking about unplugging. I can't say I'm unplugged because I'm not even sure what plugging in would be. I don't think I've always been in my own kind of world. It's like my sister said about me when I was a kid. I was neither, or a young adult, I was neither in fashion nor out of fashion. I was just somewhere next to fashion, like just kind of doing my own thing. And I am very careful about what I put in my brain. I won't look at magazines, like fashion magazines, things that are trying to sell you stuff, things that are telling you you're inadequate as you are, so you need to buy this product so that you're smarter, taller, richer, thinner, poorer, better, whatever it is. It's based on inadequacy and filling us with fear and low self-esteem so that we feel we need to purchase, consume something to feel better. There is no mindfulness about that. That is purely based on that fear. I'm not saying you can't go buy a lipstick and enjoy it, as long as you're aware that this is about a materialistic consumer world, not essence. Now, in terms of food, when I have foods that are rich in nutrients and life-giving and brightly colored, one of my favorite foods is the blueberry. I happen to think that, you know, people say there's no perfection in the world. Well, have they met the blueberry? The blueberry to me is perfect because it's one of the most powerful foods there is. It's fresh, it's full of life, it's so delicious, it's low glycemic. I'm going to take that back. It's not entirely perfect. Occasionally I'll get little pieces in my teeth. So that's the only slightly, it's 99.9% perfect other than that. When we put in those kind of rich foods that are so enriching and vital, live foods, I think that is mindful consumption. I think when we're deliberate about it, we're not just grabbing a bag of chips or junk food or whatever, but we're eating carrots and sprouting foods and different beans and all these brightly colored bounty of the earth. That is mindful consumption, but we really have to think about what it is we're putting in our system and why. Is this something that's going to benefit me and enrich me and also help the world? It's not something where, well, it's good for me, but forget everyone else, I don't care. If it's something, since we're all connected rolling balls of dust, it has to be good for all of us. So if I'm eating these blueberries, I'm making sure it's not hurting anyone else. It's not hurting the workers. I'm getting in a way that's local, sustainable, all of that. And respectful to animals, people, the environment. If we really put that effort in to explore, discover, research, then yes, I think that is mindful consumption. It is taking in what's good and healthy. If I read a book that I feel is uplifting and is going to get my mind to work more, to think more, to dream, to imagine, to expand my world, that to me is also mindful consumption. I don't read just any kind of junk, whatever, junk food, junk books, whatever is out there. I think if you really think about it and really have a goal for what you want, something that is life affirming for me and others around me, then there absolutely is that mindful consumption.
Okay, so Sarah, what's your idea of if does it really exist or not, and if so, what is it for you? The mindful consumption question.
What she said. Everything Vanessa said is is exactly how I feel. I think it's so important that we are mindful at all times, but especially when we're consuming. And that is something I've struggled with all my life, and I still struggle with it. I've been as high as 345 pounds, as low as 125 pounds. I've been in the middle, up and down. I continue to go up and down. It's a challenge that I've just accepted in my life, and surrounding myself with people who are eating and consuming mindfully and healthy has been really helpful to me. I think the issues of eating unhealthily and eating more than you need, those are all things, as Vanessa will tell you, those are deeply psychological rooted, but also there's a lot that has to do with habit. We can change our habits. I'm not going to be a victim of my habits. I'm in that process of really accepting that my old patterns were not productive and helpful and effective. And it doesn't matter how old I am, it's never too late to reprogram myself to perceive life a little bit differently and think about why I consume the way that I do. Because when I do that, I'm in such a great place, because when I eat, there's a lot of times people who have weight issues, they go up and down, can probably identify with what I'm about to say. And that is, we really could write a book on how to lose weight and how to be healthy. Us, you know, the 200, 300 pound people, because we've done it so much. So it's not that we don't know. It's really about finding out why we're not able to implement the changes. And when I am in that mode of eating healthy, working out, going for walks, I can feel the difference that when I'm mindful and when I look at the food, I'm able to see the energy in the food. I'm like, thank you for going in my body and giving me nutrition. I need this iron. Or if I eat lentils, I thank the lentils. I think it has energy. That's mindful to me. But then, there are times when I just, whether it's emotional eating, whether it's just something to do out of boredom, I will grab a bag of chips and a big thing of hummus and eat the whole thing. So it's a journey. We just practice when we can, I think. And mindful consumption is a very important topic. And I think it really connects to the waste issue too.
Oh, yes, it does. That's why we're bringing it in right now. Lisa, what for you is mindful consumption, and does it even exist, that terminology for you?
I love Sarah, she shared about it being a journey, and Vanessa talking about the power of the blueberry. I think mindful consumption is everything. I mean, it's who we surround ourselves with, what we listen to, what we look at, our thoughts. Everything is a reflection of where we are, and we have to really pay attention to that, because we can be on autopilot, and running the same story, or choosing foods that are not nourishing to our body, or there's a lot of different things we can do that really don't serve us or the planet. So I have, during COVID, really been paying attention to even simple things, like when I'm walking on the beach, put the phone down. I see so many people, on their phones, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like to stroll and talk as well, but just really smelling the smells, looking at the view, just opening myself up to it's not about me. I'm in a planet that really is amazing. Even though we're going through such great challenges, there's so much gifts that are around us right now. And I know I'm fortunate. Not everybody has access to the outside. I've talked to somebody in New York, and she's been locked in her apartment for so long, and there's no parks nearby. And I know that she really has to be creative to keep herself inspired. But I think that's what we really have to focus on, is what are we surrounding ourselves with, especially right now, building resilience. And my go-to that I've discovered that is very valuable to me in terms of my body is mushrooms. Really, what a gift they are to keep our defenses up and to nourish us. And there's a great documentary about mushrooms. So that's it. Thank you.
And for those of you who are on Instagram, you might want to go on Lisa's Instagram page, and you'll see the most stunning photographs of her. She lives in a beach community, and the most incredible photographs of sunsets and sunrises from the perspective of being on the beach. They're really quite magnificent. I strongly suggest that you go and have a look. And I often wonder when I see those photographs, and I think of all the other people who are on the beach with her at the same time, who are on their phones and missing this. You know, sunsets don't stay up, sunrises don't stay, they go really fast. And I've thought, gee, I hope there are other people that we can really and truly help and assist with, through these programs and through these webinars, to maybe look at the possibility of putting away whatever it is that they use for distraction, and be a little bit more mindful in where they are, look around to see who's there, what is there, but most of all, to be aware that they are there. So Vanessa, I know you have a comment from an audience member.
Yes, and wonderful comment. I just wanted to say, my mind, when you were talking about Lisa and the sunsets, and she'd been talking about mushrooms, I thought you were going to say that she has these lovely images of sunsets from the perspectives or the viewpoints of mushrooms. So my mind just kind of went in a crazy place. So Bobby Alanis says, hello, I'm 45-year-old female who's been, quote, connected / enlightened for most of my life. Mindfulness means being fully aware consciously and subconsciously of all aspects of all existence at the same time. Yes, all existence. I so echo that. Being aware of self and higher self and others and the environment, the animals, and that all things are impacted by each decision I make. We can share our experiences with each other, but it's our experiences to learn from. So well said, Bobby. Thank you so much for that. I think that is beautifully said, like right there, boom. That just encapsulates the entire, I think, what we've all been saying so beautifully in that paragraph. And it really is, to talk about mushrooms again, or rather mycelium networks, that trees hundreds of miles away can communicate with other trees about weather patterns and what's coming and different environmental issues. Just having this web of knowing that we, as these balls of dust, are all connected, that your success is my success, that your pain is my pain. When we hurt animals, we're hurting ourselves. Chopping down rainforests, that's hurting me. We're all connected together. And that when we take an action, it's not just for ourselves, it's for the planet. And I think that is a responsibility that we each have, to be mindful of that and of the impact that it has on others. And a lot of times when people say to me, don't you ever feel tempted to do X, Y, and Z, or, you know, I'll be with pre-vegan friends and they'll say, aren't you tempted just to have some dairy or cheese or, you know, dairy ice cream? And I say no, because I think about the suffering it causes. How can I enjoy something if I have an image of a cow having her baby ripped from her, and, you know, having the breast milk of another species? Like, I can have no pleasure from that because I feel her pain. Her pain is my pain. I'm hurting myself. When we're really connected to that web, that mycelium network that connects us all, that sense of empathy that we have for each being, I can't possibly want anyone to suffer for me, especially when there's so many beautiful things that are there that are available for me that are so delicious that don't involve hurting anybody. So I thank you so much, Bobby, for that brilliant comment. So well said, so articulate, and I'm glad it's up. And I wanted to ask if maybe Bobby and Lisa and Sarah could also write down any references they've made or any sources or any kind of websites that you have that you think could be helpful, because I know, Lisa, you mentioned one, and I was going to ask you to write it in the comments for people so we can continue to share our resources with each other.
So we probably need to then have a look at what actually constitutes pleasure. And this pleasure principle, is it the basis of consumption, mindless consumption? And if we then decide to be mindful, do we need to give up pleasure, or do we just switch from what our concept of pleasure is and our perception of pleasure is? Anyone wants to take that on? Just put your hand up, please, and I shall bring you up on the screen. Okay, if nobody will, then I shall. Okay, so I'd like everyone to start thinking about what constitutes pleasure for them. Pleasure is not something that I shy away from, nor do I ever believe that people ought to shy away from. And if you want pleasure, you better be willing to take pain as well, because they're both on the same coin. And the source of your pleasure can be someone else's misery. The source of my misery can be somebody else's pleasure. So our perceptions change as we grow and as we begin to redefine for ourselves who we are and why we're here on earth. And I think the only two questions we ever ought to live, and I believe questions are to be lived. There are no answers, really. They're to be lived. And the two questions that I learned when I was studying with Deepak Chopra to be a Deepak Chopra coach was, who am I? And why am I here? Or what's my dharma? And those of you who have studied with me or taken meditation classes with me, you know that this is at the core of everything that I am. And this is something that I feel that each of us needs to ask ourselves in this season of what I call the upcoming gluttony and the season of excess and gluttony. And Sarah, I really felt for you when you were speaking, and I really loved your honesty and the integrity with which you spoke, because I think that a lot of people, you know, I've lived in many countries actually, and this is the only truly capitalistic one that I've lived in. And what I found was that the pleasure principle here rules, but pleasure is defined by media and by advertisers and by corporations and by the government. We're told when to eat, what to eat, and then we build a holiday around it, and we consume around it, and then we have to see certain people around it, and we never think, what is the consequence to others? We never think, oh, so if I celebrate Thanksgiving, what really was Thanksgiving? Oh, maybe Native Americans don't celebrate this. Maybe it's a slap in the face to them. Oh, maybe I need to stop doing this. I really don't like going to my relatives every year. I hate that long flight. I hate having to go there, and I'm miserable afterwards, and then I feel sick afterwards. Why do I do this? Why are we not questioning the things that we learn from external sources? What if we lived our lives from an internal satisfaction, satisfying the internal side of what matters to us? And I think once we do that, we begin to realize that everything external only creates more disconnection, and everything internal only magnifies and reveals to us that there is no self. There is just this big, massive energy ball, and we're all parts of it. And because we're parts of an energy ball, if it's like a tree, I happen to use trees a lot for analogy because they are my favorite beings, and my whole goal in life is to be a tree. And what I see with trees is that there's this huge, some of them are small, some of them are medium, some are big, but there's this huge trunk. and it sits deep in the earth. Imagine it sits in the soil, it sits in dirt. It gets all of its nourishment from dirt, and it gets its nourishment from us breathing off what's toxic to us. Or carbon dioxide makes it really spread wider, and it thrives on it. So what we see as toxic, it takes in and it returns as these beautiful works of art called leaves and branches. And it gives us shelter, and it cools us, and it gives birds and so many different creatures a home. And it just keeps giving and giving of itself. And Vanessa is back with us. She has gone for a moment. And when we look at this magnificent being called a tree, we realize we are part of this tree. This tree doesn't exist without us because it needs our carbon dioxide. It needs us to be here. None of us, not one of us, lives without the other. Not one of us survives without the other. So every time we cut down a redwood forest or a tree in the Amazon, we're cutting down bits and pieces of ourselves. It's looking at native cultures, indigenous cultures, and they see the rivers as the blood. I just saw I watch a lot of indigenous programs, and I just saw a program with Native Americans, and they are trying to take back a bit of their land right now. Good luck to them. And they are, it's actually near Lisa's original space. It's near Seattle, and they're taking back what was taken away from them and built into a dam, which of course changed the migratory route of the salmon. And it was the most fascinating program to show that when you take away the salmon, everything else is destroyed. Everything, the entire environment is destroyed just because you rerouted the salmon. It was one of my favorite things I've ever seen, but I don't know the name of it because I came upon it as I was going somewhere else, and I stopped to watch it, and I thought, oh, I need to be home. I wish I were home to watch it, but it was on PBS, and PBS tends to repeat things a lot. So I'm hoping that it will be there again. That's why I cannot post it, Vanessa, so that we can put it up as a resource. But watch Native Americans. There's a program, there's a channel in Canada. Whenever I'm there, I watch this channel. So much so that people say, Doreet, you are an addict for TV, which is weird because in the United States, I don't watch any TV. I get to Canada and I turn on this channel immediately. It's called APN, Aboriginal Peoples Network. They were down in the United States for a while, trying to build it here with Native Americans, and unfortunately didn't succeed. So they're back in Canada now. But it has the most amazing shows. It's an entire network. And I strongly suggest I think you can find it on YouTube, APN, Aboriginal Peoples Network. If you want to learn about mindfulness and about reconnecting with the truth of all beings, and not because they're separate from us that we need to connect with them, but because in doing so we connect with ourselves, I strongly suggest that you either spend some time with Native Americans, get to know them, or at least spend some time on this network. We are on their land. This is stolen land. I happen to believe that nobody owns land, and they never believed in ownership either. But it was taken away from them and then parceled out and sold as if it could be done. And in doing that, it didn't just destroy them, it destroyed every aspect of nature and the rules and laws of nature. It's more than just the physical land. It's the energy that we're destroying, the energy of mindfulness, and then we substitute it with consumption. We're actually called consumers. That's the name that's been given to us. I am not okay with being called a consumer. I have never been okay with it. I shall never be okay with it.
You switched off your mic, Doreet.
And thank you. And this is why I have this show, because I really want to make sure that all of us, every single one of us on this earth, begins to relook at ourselves and rebrand ourselves. Now we're even branded. We're branded as consumers. And begin to remember that we have the power to take our lives back. No pandemic, no virus, no government, no corporation can tell us who we are. It is only we who can do that. Thank you, Lisa. So I'm asking you all to be more mindful as we go into this next few months. We're going to be talking a lot about mindful consumption or mindless consumption. We're going to be talking about zero waste, because like Sarah said, they go together. because they're both the same, actually. We're just going to be looking at different aspects of it. So we invite you to join us in the comments, even if you're seeing this after the live is finished. We invite you to spread this information and bring more people on so we can have a conversation amongst us all, so that we will find the support that we need to live more mindful in this life. So last word from Indiana here, Vanessa.
Yes, I think that Allura Wellness, the vegan organic wellness center I started, was really based on the principle that we can live well and joyfully and abundantly without harming anyone, in harmony with the planet, with animals, with other beings. So there is no loss. And that when we have true self-love, it's not about what's good in that moment, you know, that chocolate bar or cocaine or, you know, all these high stimulating things that we think are responding to that pleasure principle. Those are really part of that lack inside, and that immediacy of doing something that feels good but is so toxic for us, to me, is a sign of our low self-esteem. And that when we replenish ourselves, we don't want to do something that could hurt us in any way, even if it's a high dopamine product, drug, food, anything like that. So when we really are connected with our spirit and our connection to others and the planet, we really want to nurture ourselves. The pleasure that we take in those things is completely different. We don't feel pleasure in them anymore. We don't want to pollute the temple, which is our collective body. So it really changes how we perceive pleasure and what we allow into this space.
So 30 minutes wrap up, Sarah, and then afterwards we'll go to Lisa. Sarah, please.
Really well said. Thank you, Vanessa. I was just listening so intensely. And Doreet, you as well, thank you so much for sharing your brilliant minds. I mean, I learned so much from you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the claps. I haven't thanked anybody. I just, when I'm talking. But I wanted to just say one thing about pleasure. And for me, it is a lot about that instant gratification, you know. Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa, for mentioning that, because that instant gratification is what we want to look at, is why do we need such instant gratification all the time? And just be interested in our own, not even judge others. Look at myself. What do I instantly gratify myself with, and why? And I think that's a really good place to
and
start.
we will be looking at this. Thank you. Instant gratification, first topic we will be covering next week, Wednesday, this time. Okay, Lisa, you are on.
Thank you. You guys have just really expanded my consciousness about the pleasure principle. And I have been really thinking a lot about joy. Joy is, rather than happiness or pleasure, which a lot of times are short-lived, it's really deepening into joy. Even in our darkest moments, we can still find joy. And joy a lot is an internal game. It's not tied to things, right? Because you get pleasure, and then after pleasure, you go back to status quo, and usually there's a depth that you experience. And joy is more sustainable. It's like Doreet so gloriously shared about her love for trees, which I adore trees too. And the deeper meaning of life and the gift of the people that we love. That's joy for me.
Wonderful, everyone. I am so glad that we had this conversation today. We would like to extend the conversation to our listeners. We would like everyone to really take part, and we know that each person has a real gift of themselves to add. So let's get this shared and let people in on this, please. And let's all regather next week, if we are able to, at this same time, same place, at the point where we meet ourselves and we speak about instant gratification. What does this mean for us? And what about it do we want to continue? And what about it do we wish to give up? So until next week, on behalf of Vanessa and On behalf of Sarah, on behalf of Lisa and Doreet, and thank you all for coming, and see you all next week. Bye for now.